beyond my wildest dreams. Maybe that road could have carried me to streets of gold. Things aren't always as they seem. Looking back on all the chances that I missed, some I held, some slipped away. One street over where my memories exist, I wondered what would change, I really couldn't say. In this life there's nothing certain, except the curtain that rises to the stage. Silly games of second guessing, I just forget the lessons that I couldn't learn. Because one street over there's a life I could have known that would have kept me from the one I have today. Times gone by, I've traded like dirt into play. I thought my memories would end. One street over is now 1,000 miles away. When I close my eyes, I'm back to where I've been. In this life there's nothing certain, except the curtain that rises to the stage.
Hello, good morning. I'm going to go ahead and interrupt the guys. This is 1100 WSG. I'm U-Turn LaVern, and this is one street over into it for Monday. Man, we got to work 5 days this week. I tell you, that's one thing. I really love teaching because we get some time off and stuff. And I got Labor Day off last week, and I'm telling you, Bill, I never got to have a lot of holidays.
Around the corner.
Yeah, we'll have fall break here before long up at Greenbrier, or at Robertson County Schools. We got fall break coming up. I'm wanting to say the week of the 13th, 14th, 15th of October. So we're a little over a month away. But I have a wedding on a Thursday night in October. October 23rd. Yeah, I know. And so we got this wedding coming up, and so I'll be. Lee Marie asked me if I was going to be working fall break week, and I said, well, yeah, because I said I'm going to have to take off 3 days the next week because we're going to go have a wedding. So, and I found out, I told you I was having another grandchild, but we found out this weekend that it's a girl. So, how about that? We got a girl.
How many girls you got? None?
Well, no, we've got one granddaughter. So we've got 3 grandsons and 1 granddaughter.
Yeah.
So, how about that?
Out here.
Yeah, I was going to say, everybody's super excited about it. I was shocked. I mean, if I was sitting there and, they do those canon things and they do these reveal things, and they threw that and doing a special on Robertson County. Oh, Paul Rainey said they're doing a special on Robertson County this week on Channel 2. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, that's right.
I didn't know that. That's cool, Paul. Thank you. But, excuse me.
Also Adams, Cedar Hill, and Greenbrier.
Oh, that's so cool. I love that. So very, very good. Well, and but when they popped that little rocket thing and that thing came out pink, I was like, that's pink. I was so shocked. But yeah, we're getting a girl.
Wrong color.
Getting another girl. So anyway, and it was what was so hysterical. My daughter-in-law's little nephew, little Jackson, and then my grandson they're both 3 years old. My little grandson Miller, they had decided that, the mamas had asked them, what do y'all want? They said, boy, we want a boy. They cried. They were upset. They were upset when it wasn't a boy. And I'm telling you, it was so funny because, they were just 3, but they were hysterical when it wasn't a boy. We got so tickled at them. But Bill messaged me yesterday and he said, here's what we're going to talk about for, I'm sorry, I'm getting a tickle in my throat with my allergies. It's that time of year. But talking about with our history Monday, our second Monday. So go ahead, Bill, take it away while I get my throat clear.
The second thing, the first one we want to talk about is county fairs, because the fair is coming up next week.
next week, and I'm going to have. We're taking a break from Faith Friday on Friday, so we can bring. Try to message Trent Cobb, and he's going to get some of the fair board members in on Friday, so we can kind of walk y'all through the fair. So that is coming up on Friday.
Okay, and then the second part is, and we may not get to the second part, is movie theaters of Springfield, which the Capitol, everybody knows, was Springfield Cinema, used to be the Capitol Theater, is on Main Street, and it's going to be put up for auction here in a couple of weeks. So
Man, I want
thought
somebody
I'd
to do
write
something
for
cool
the
with
paper
that.
for
Yeah.
that, which I did and turned it into them. But then this week and next week, what I've written about is County Fair.
Okay.
And it has a lot of history, just oozing out. Since it's been going on for 157 years.
I love that you're writing for the paper. I just get the
enjoy
biggest
doing
kick
it.
out of it
I don't
every
get
time I
paid
see it.
for I just enjoy doing it.
But I just get the biggest kick out of you doing that. That's
and,
awesome.
And I'm not the final authority. There's some things I make mistakes on, and some things I tell that other people don't know, which is neat. But I just enjoy talking about county history. A lot of neat things have gone on in Springfield.
There really
Rockland
has.
County, yeah.
For sure. So where do you want to start, Bill?
Okay, the fair.
Okay.
The first fair, that fair is over 150 years old. So it started 3 years after the Civil War ended. So it's one of the first county fairs in the state of Tennessee, especially Middle Tennessee. And the fair was so unique. We think of fairs, to really understand history, you cannot think like you normally think. You got to put your mind back it's especially in Bible, when you're studying Bible, you have to look back at their customs and manners and things to understand what they were, why and when they were doing things. That's the way it is at County Fair. County Fair, when it started, there was no electricity. There was no tractors, no things running like that. It was all mechanical. And we think of the county fair where it is now, but it's been where it is now since the 50s. But before that, it was out on Leota Street and the old Nashville Highway, which we call Main Street now, but it used to be called the old Nashville Highway. So it's right off the old Nashville Highway.
You're talking about Highway 41.
Yeah.
Okay.
It went through Springfield.
Right.
So that's where they first had the fair, and there was, like I said, there were people coming in to our fair because no one else was having them much, and they were coming in from all over. So the trains ran several times a day into Springfield from Nashville and other places, bringing people in. Well, back then there were no hotels, there were no motels, there were, we didn't have anything here for people to stay. So people opened their houses for people to stay. And if you'll look down Main Street, south of the railroad track and Bats Boulevard around there, you will see the houses the older houses have metal railing stairs going up the sides to an upstairs apartment. And that's where they rented out, people coming in from Nashville or wherever, they would rent out those places. And on the north side of town, houses were rented out, and they had, for traveling people and all, they did that then and made money doing that. And they
boarding houses kind of thing.
Or
yeah.
A house with an upstairs rooms or something like that.
Would it be something, if you remember Petticoat Junction?
Yeah.
As soon as you were talking about, and the only reason Petticoat Junction came up on, they have that, there's a free TV app, and I can't think of what it's called. Pluto maybe TV, something like that. And I accidentally saw a Petticoat Junction episode the other day, and I had forgotten all about that show. But they had the train coming in all the time,
Right.
and then they had the Shady Rest Hotel, but it was a hotel, but it was just really a converted house, it seemed like.
Yeah.
But I didn't mean to interrupt, but it just made the images of Petticoat Junction go through my head when you start talking about that.
It's interesting that it was like that. And back then, there were no electricity and lights. They had candles. At nighttime, things shut down because there was no lights in town. Springfield didn't get lights till around 1900.
Oh,
so
wow.
Back then, people were used to that. They were used to sitting on the front porch at night talking and before they went to bed. And they usually went to bed not too far after dark. So anyway, we get off track there. But the the first fairs, they had rings, and they different rings where people could sit and watch what's going on in the rings, or they could walk in between them, and they would have maybe one ring showing clothing that somebody was making to gain prizes, or there may be a new agricultural piece of machinery made of wood or metal, and that they pull behind mules or something like that. And it's funny that some of the first fairs, they had a horse show up on the top of the hill going north of Springfield on 431. There was a little ring up there, and they had a horse show up there. And the fair would be spread around in tobacco warehouses. They would have things going on in different warehouses. And that went on for quite a while, even into the 1900s. And people, like I said, came from far and wide, other up in Kentucky. And in fact, one time we had the fair in Adams. Wasn't here. And one time we had it in Adairsville, Kentucky. And then the next year, Adairsville had theirs here, a combination of Robeson County and Logan County.
So they just joined together, and it just would move to different cities. Okay, okay.
Yeah, that's what they did. And, there was a lot of activity from our surrounding little towns in Robeson County, women's clubs, youth, 4-Hers type thing, and they were different than now. They came to the fair to display their wares, and like the home demonstration club, a women's club, they would bring things of what they sewed or whatever they did back then. So fairs were different then. Now, still the same things. You have booths, and they had booths then. And one I remember reading about one fair. This was like 2 or 3 years into the fair after it got started. A man brought a balloon from Nashville on a train, and he was going to set up a balloon that goes up in the air. It was tethered with a rope.
Right.
And so, and it had a basket on the bottom of it. So he got out there. This is up on Leota Street where they had the fair. He had the balloon there and put the fire under it, raised it up, a hot air balloon, and he was trying to get people to get in the basket. And it would go up a little bit above the trees. And it wasn't far, as long as their rope was. And he was having a difficult time. Well, next to the balloon display there was a Woodard and Moore whiskey display. Back then, they Woodard sold wholesale whiskey to everybody across the United States and even into Europe. It was considered one of the best whiskeys around. And Moore was another one, and they went in together and had this booth and demonstrating their whiskey right next to where
taste testing.
Right next to the balloon display. So finally, there was a guy there that was test tasting the whiskey, and he had test tasted a little too much. He'd go and come back. Well, I want to taste that again, and he got a little tipsy, and they talked him into getting into the basket, and they were going to let that thing up. So he gets in the basket, and he's waving at everybody, and he's carrying on, and the balloon goes up, and it gets up about top of the trees, and a wind comes along and blows the balloon into the trees, and it tips the basket over, and he falls out, going through the branches.
Yeah.
And
broke his fall, apparently, maybe.
Time he hit the ground, he was knocked unconscious.
Oh, my goodness.
And he was cut up from hitting those. So they thought maybe he died. They weren't sure. Everybody gathered around, and they couldn't revive him. And so somebody had the bright idea, said, get some of that Woodard whiskey over there, and let's put it on his cuts. And it didn't do anything. So they put it down his throat, and he woke up immediately.
Oh, my goodness.
So
that's like something out of one of those movies where, like, give him a shot of whiskey and see if that wakes him up. That's funny.
A few years later, he came back with a balloon, and a man named Professor Gunkel from Springfield helped sponsor it, and he went up in the balloon, and everything was fine there. But
that's great.
Funny they would do that. But of course, back then, whiskey and tobacco was. That's why Springfield Baptist Church was built. The one built around early 1900s. Tobacco and whiskey money was what built it, and a lot of other churches in town too.
You mean the Springfield Baptist, the one right off the square?
Yeah,
that one.
Yeah,
Okay.
they never had any fundraising problems because all the bigwigs of town who were into whiskey making were members.
Oh,
So
my.
they did fine. I've got a picture of when their first day they had dinner on the ground, and it's funny is you look from Fifth and Main on top of the hill down toward the church, which would have been on the right, and you see these buggies on the left with their arms sticking up, selling buggies there, and then on the right were cars. So it was a combination of both at that time. And there were so many people there that part of them went into the church and part of them went to a tobacco warehouse, which was next door, a Kemper warehouse, and they had dinner on the ground there in the warehouse. And it's a neat picture, and how they did it. It had two. That old church had two towers on each side of the front, and they had. I remember as a kid, they had music playing on Sunday. They would play. Maybe gospel music or something on Sunday morning. Now people have a fit, and they did back several years ago, but they were still doing it in the 50s when I was a kid. And they would turn those amplifiers up. They had loudspeakers that's big around, up there in that little tower they had, and they played it all over town. And I think the Presbyterian Church may have done that too, and the Methodists, I'm not sure, but I remember the Baptists doing that. And then somebody complained about the noise.
Waking me up.
That went away. So anyway.
I've got a question about the dinner. Okay, so you said that the whiskey money built that first church.
Yeah.
So back then, was it just a part? I mean, did they have the alcohol and stuff at the dinner on the ground, you think?
No, what I meant was
I'm just
people who
kinda
were making
curious.
a large amount of money in the whiskey business were members there.
But I just, since that was not frowned upon then,
No,
I have to,
Not then, no.
Well, I mean, still, my husband was raised Northern Catholic.
Yeah.
And so in the Catholic Church, they don't think anything about alcohol. Right. And down here, a lot of the northern folks that come into this area and see the teetotal, there's a lot of teetotalers, as in that they don't partake in any kind of alcohol. And so it's just kind of interesting to see when that switch was made, because this town was built on alcohol and tobacco.
Right.
It really was. I mean, if you know the history.
When alcohol was banned, tobacco came up. So there was the tobacco money. The people who were big in tobacco. And everybody involved in tobacco made tons of money back then.
Okay.
And then they had the tobacco wars, early 1900s.
Right. I want to see that play. I have not seen the tobacco wars play. I want to see that play this year. But we're talking about fair and all this, and this is all tied in together, how all this stuff just kind of overlaps, really.
It does, yeah.
And then you featured it at the county fair. That's where you kind of brought it all together and was like, hey, look at this, right?
Well, Springfield was a wealthy county back then because of that. They were, when I say Springfield, Robeson County was a wealthy county. Springfield was in the middle of it. And people recognized Springfield and Robeson County. They all used to call it Old Robertson, and that was back in the 1800s, Old Robertson. And because Robeson had been here for a long time, since the late 1700s, 1796.
We're going back to Kilgore, right?
Yeah, well, before that. I mean, when the city of Springfield was first incorporated, it was 1819, I think, but it was actually named in 1796 or something like that.
Okay.
So it's been around a long time, and it's longer than a whole lot of other places in Tennessee. But the county fair was something that everybody came around. It gave families something for them to do, to come meet, people. That's the reason the churches are so popular back in then, because that's where people got their news. They didn't have telephones. Newspapers were not that popular, and people came to church to get the news, and especially Civil War time. Itinerant preachers would come into a church and tell what's going on somewhere else, like up in Kentucky or Virginia or somewhere like that. And it may be weeks old news, but that's how they got their news. And church was a place that if you didn't go to church, you were ostracized, I mean, so everybody went back then, and it was that way everywhere. So you had the county fairs, and then let's see, I wrote down here what they call the first fair is. I'll find that in a minute. But one of the interesting things about the first fair we had, that one group called the Ku Klux had a booth there. Ku Klux were not bad people, and it just became radicalized into the Ku Klux Klan. Ku Klux meant circle, and they were doing good things for the community, especially maybe a family whose husband died, and they would go and help bring in the crops and things like that. Or if a husband was beating his wife, they'd go visit the husband and say, if you don't stop this, we're going to take care of you. And that's what the Ku Klux first was like. And then they became very radicalized, where they would come against the black population, and the poor farmers joined in first because they felt like they were slighted and whatever.
Yeah.
But the Ku Klux Klan came out of that. But at first, the Ku Klux was not a bad organization.
And that's one of the hardest things when you hear that, you think, oh, how could, it ever have been started and not been a bad thing? And it's just, you know what I mean? When you hear that.
Yeah, it happens to a lot of things.
Because it's just sickening when you think about what the Ku Klux Klan has done and did and still does. They're, thank goodness, not as prominent as they once were, but it's
they were fairly prominent in Greenbrier years ago. But anyway, that's an interesting point, and people like you jump and say, "Oh, that's not." I wouldn't tell that.
Yeah,
but
and again, it's because of we've got biracial in our family.
Yeah.
I've got I talk a lot about. I've got a half black nephew who was born in '79. And, up in West Kentucky. And so we have dealt with this for many years. And anytime you hear that, you just kind of, get you back up a little bit. You just get guarded. But I have heard that about that, and it's so hard to see how radicalized they became and how horrifying.
You don't really get a handle on history or understand it until you understand what was going on then and the thoughts then.
Right.
You can't.
The hermeneutic of it all, as they say in the biblical studies, honestly and truthfully, that can be applied to any time in history.
It is, history or Bible.
You better believe it.
Yeah.
And as that's a word I didn't even know until I started a deep biblical study, probably in the last 10 years.
It's a funny sounding word.
But hermeneutics is
taught seminaries.
If you went to Bible college and you were going to be a preacher, you took hermeneutics classes. Well, they didn't give them to the girls. You had to elect to do it. Was when I was in college, but hermeneutics can be applied, like you said, to your local communities.
You have to do that to understand
what was going on when all this happened.
To get off subject a little bit, I study Bible customs and things like that, and I buy books written by people in the 1800s. I don't want a new book. I want the old books.
Right.
And I've got several of old books that tell about the customs of Eastern times because they were there and saw it. But later I noticed stuff written in like 1980 to 2000 and so on. They twist it around because they're trying to put their own little thoughts in there. And you miss a lot of stuff because of that. So I just buy those. I got books falling apart.
That's fun stuff.
But anyway.
But the hermeneutics of the county fair, think about what was going on. Just like you said, they didn't have anything. It was all mechanical. They didn't have tractors and things when they first began. And it was quite different. Very, very different. It was a different world. They didn't even have electricity yet, y'all. So.
Now you think what the money was back then, mid 1800s, 50 cents was nothing. And the second fair they had, they took in $5,000. That is amazing.
That's a lot of money for that time.
Well, there was nothing going on in the area of fairs.
Yeah.
It was just, we had the going thing here because we were those men. And the Kiwanis Club began sponsoring it in the 1920s. That's the first time any club. Kiwanis Club is probably the oldest club in operations now, but they sponsored the fair. They didn't have a fair association up until much later, and C.C. Bell was the first man that headed up the fair association. You probably don't know who that is, but if you read much about Robinson County and Springfield, his name pops up a lot. He was mayor, actually, at one time.
Okay. Talking with Bill Jones, this is History Monday. Second Monday of the month is when we devote to just historical stuff. You know, they say that they're doing something with Channel 2 on Robertson County. Did they talk to you? They need to talk to you from Channel 2 if they're...
Well, there's more people know more than I do.
But I always wonder what they're going to... Are they going to do anything about our history or anything?
I don't know. I just saw it advertised.
It sounds like they probably have already produced it. But
I just saw it advertised on Channel 2. I don't know what they're doing.
Interesting. Interesting.
But, you know, this county has a lot of history, a lot of interesting stuff. I got a lot of stuff out of old newspapers. And I'll tell you now, there's a site called newspapers.com. It's very expensive. I think I pay $165 every 6 months to subscribe to it. But you can do a search, one word or several words, and it'll find it, whatever newspaper they have it was in. So I've talked to them the other day. I said, I would really like for you all to get our newspapers in Robinson County. And said, we would love to. And I said, we have it at the archives on microfilm. And they've got that from the state. And state has it too, the museum. So they said, we would love to do that, but said we need to know what is, what am I trying to say, illegal to put out on
Copyrighted.
Copyrighted.
Okay.
Mine, as I get older, I lose words.
So you have to have the Well, me too. And they have to have know where to obtain the copyrights to do it. Okay.
So we're in the process of doing that now.
Okay, that'd be fascinating.
And I talked to the lady up at the archive. She's very much on board with that. And so I told the people at the newspaper.com, I said, we will do this. We've got to get everything together. And what we'll have to do, I think, is order more, and there's a lot of microfilms, a lot every year since the early 1900s, and there's a lot of different newspapers too. Get that from the state, buy them, and then send them to newspapers.com, then they'll put it on there. Right now, if I'm looking for something, I've got to say, okay, that happened, I know, in 1948. So I go to the newspapers and I read from 47 to 49. I have to read the Herald, the Times, to find what I'm looking for. And it takes hours and days to do that.
Yeah.
But if you head on newspapers.com, you just do a search for it. There it is.
Ooh, that's cool.
Which people would love that. And they haven't done it before because of the cost of the film. But she's talking about, she really was one of her main projects up there to Jaylene to do this. So I'm tickled. I told her I'd be glad to help with it, expenses or whatever,
That's really cool.
I think that's really important. So
neat.
then the average person can go in there instead of spending hours at the library, which they have the things too, or at the archives up there, they can go on it online and do it.
That'd be so cool. That would be really cool.
Yeah. But you have to watch out. In the older papers, some of the information is not correct. It's incorrect. So you have to, in fact, I was doing research one time on something, and they had this hanging in Springfield on some date, I forget which, and they said they took them down the hill and hung them where they hang everybody, and I thought, I don't think that's true. And I got looking, and other papers, and there was a Springfield, Kentucky. That's where it happened.
Oh, okay.
And I found it in a paper in Springfield, Kentucky. And I thought, then I had somebody writing a book about it call me and said, have you seen that? And I said, yes, that is not correct. Things in the paper are not necessarily right.
Well, they're not now either.
And I noticed sometimes they had exaggerations, just like this $5,000. Newspapers exaggerated the number of people that would attend. Can you think, just like, for instance, I remember one instance they talking about 5,000 people at the courthouse. They can't have 5,000 people up there. There's no room for it.
Yeah.
Maybe 500, but anyway, you just have to take it with a grain of salt sometimes until you can prove it.
Right.
By looking at some other source.
That's interesting. I'm talking with Bill Jones about just our History Monday episode. We really enjoy doing this. Just getting an update on some of the things that we didn't know or maybe have forgotten. And with it being Fair Week, which is next week, guys. I've got the fair board, Trent's getting the fair board together, whoever, and it may just be Trent Cobb coming in here, but that is fine. He is very knowledgeable, of course. He served as the president of the fair board a few years ago, and just depending on whoever's schedule can make it in, they'll come in on Friday and walk us through the events of the fair. I think it opens on Tuesday next week, if I'm not mistaken. But we'll hear more about that. But let me go ahead and pause and let's talk about Barry and Rebecca Richards with Exit Prime Realty. We're at the half hour, or we're at the halfway point here, and I'll let you gather your thoughts. We're going to, of course, talk about Barry and Rebecca because we always do. They're our longest running full-time sponsor. We appreciate them so much, just helping us keep this program on the air and doing so much in their community. You will see them out and about all over the place. If you want to see some of their latest listings, easily go to Barry Richards or Rebecca Richards, Exit Prime Realty. You'll find a unique Facebook page for each one of them. You'll find a unique website for each one of them. And by doing that, you're going to see all the latest homes that they have posted. You can get on a mailing list. Barry sends me listings all the time. And you can have, say, if you want a particular address. We've always asked them to keep an eye on the properties that border ours up at the top of our property because one of our boys would like to build on the back side of our property, and we don't have any road frontage. So they've been kind of keeping an eye on things up there for us, and will let us know if something comes available in that area. You can do that with realtors that you've got a relationship with. And if you want to reach out to them, again, Barry Richards, Rebecca Richards, Exit Prime Realty. You can go to sellwithbecky.com, sellwithbecky.com, or buy.robertscounty.com, or you can give Rebecca a call, 615-504-7425, 615-504-7425. You got to remember, too, that she's been at this, one of the first in the area to be a seniors real estate specialist. If you're somebody that's older, and you're wondering, what am I going to do with my property? Maybe my kids have moved away. I don't really know what to do. They can help you walk through that and advise you on the tax implications of it if you sell property, all of those things, and get you ready. They can also talk to you about if maybe you want to get property up in Kentucky. You want to work in Tennessee but live in Kentucky. What are the implications? Because that is a state with a state income tax. That's going to affect your bottom line and how much home you can buy, because you got to consider that in your budget. Talk to them today. Barry, of course, the marketer of the bunch. He is the broker here in Springfield, has a Springfield office. Rebecca has an agency office up in White House, and together they combine, and they are Exit Prime Realty. Exit Prime Realty, Barry and Rebecca Richards. When you contact them, please let them know U-Turn sent you. Talking with Bill Jones about all things historical here in Robertson County, and we've got the fair coming up. The fair has changed a lot, but it is one of the oldest fairs around, and it is just a lot of fun. Fair will be coming up next week. I love that it's later in the year. Sometimes we have to have it early because of the carnival.
It's been jockeyed around different times.
Well, and because
late fall, early fall, summer.
And the reason for that currently is because of the carnival that we want to get. We have to work on their schedule, so when they're available, because we're not as big as some of the fairs, so we don't get first pick. So we have to just kind of work with them, and unfortunately, we're getting them later in the year. So that's going to be exciting.
Speaking of the carnival, back in the early 80s, 1980s, we had, do you remember the Tiny Tim who sang Tiptoe to the Tulips with a ukulele? He was here.
Yeah.
But he wasn't well known.
Right.
And I remember I was there. I saw him, and I thought, this is the strangest guy I've ever seen. And I go back to this, he was in this trailer eating a pizza.
Oh, my goodness.
And I found out.
I remember Tiny Tim.
That I did some research on him, and that's what all he ate was pizzas.
Yeah.
And he died of a heart attack because he ate so many pizzas. But he got married on Johnny Carson's show to Miss Vicky. You remember that?
Mm-hmm.
Well, he was very popular. People laughed at him, which I don't know they would do that today, but that was sort of a mean thing. I thought that he was very odd looking. He was Jewish. And
I didn't know he was Jewish. Interesting.
And he was, he traveled fairs. He was over in the Wilson County Fair and some other places in Tennessee until then he'd move on to Illinois or somewhere else. But anyway,
I kind of think he came through Western Kentucky one time. I kind of feel like I remember seeing him at in
He was-
Western Kentucky too, up in Mayfield at some point, because we have our fair that happens right there in Mayfield. The fairgrounds were not damaged by the tornadoes, and we've actually got one of my girls I went to high school with, Jill. Her and her husband Hugh have built this, town that it's like a little Western town. Very, very cool little.
I've heard of that.
Cartwright.
I've heard about that. Yeah.
Well, my girl I played basketball with, she's 2 years, same year as my sister, Jill Kirby. They're the ones, her and Hugh put that together, and it's right there at the fairgrounds.
Yeah.
And we would, so the fair was a very big deal for Graves County, and it happened right there in Mayfield because that's our county seat. But we also had this little plaza that ran in behind the theater, where they had Grants and all of that. I don't know if you remember the Grants department stores, kind of like a Kmart.
Yeah,
but it was called Grants.
The chain.
Yeah, and they would have these little trailers, kind of like the traveling carnivals you see that just pop up in the parking lots. But they would have these trailers that would come in, and they would have odd things, like Ripley's Believe It or Not kind of thing. And for some reason, I'm wanting to say
There was some came through Springfield like that long ago on Main Street. They'd set up and they have a trapeze type thing and animals and whatever.
And I think that's where I saw Tiny Tim, if I'm not mistaken. It just that's kind of vaguely, I'm going to be going back to my 45th class reunion here in a couple of weeks. And so maybe I can ask them and see if any of them remember that. But all this stuff around the fair and any kind of anything to draw people in and get attention. Of course, those kinds of things, people wouldn't go out for that now because, they get on their phones, they get on their devices. And so the things that grabbed our attention back then certainly wouldn't now.
Well, another thing they had I thought was interesting about that same time, they had a bear in a cage, and people would wrestle the bear.
Try to wrestle it.
And if the bear won, which he always did, it was amazing to me. He could pick up a big old guy and lay him down on the mat just like he didn't weigh anything. Yeah. And then they give a bear a Coca-Cola in a glass bottle, and he would guzzle that Coke down, and that was his prize for wrestling.
Oh,
and they had a muzzle on him, and so he could somehow drink that Coke. But it was so funny to watch that.
But I do remember, I heard Nate Bargatze, he's the comedian out of Old Hickory.
Yeah, I know who he is, yeah.
He was talking about...
Moved here from New York.
Well, he's here. He's still back here.
I know. He went to Chicago, New York, and then came back here.
And just a huge success. I just love watching him. But it's so funny. He talks about, because his dad was a clown and a magician. Yep. So they did the fair all the time.
Had a special Sunday morning on television.
Oh, my gosh, he's so funny. But they had... he was talking about the people who would wrestle the orangutan, try to box the orangutan. I remember an orangutan coming in at something with the fair one time. So what we did for amusement, y'all, is crazy.
I remember I went steady with a girl one day.
Oh, how funny.
We were at the fair and got on Ferris wheel, and I was rocking the thing, and I said, I'll stop rocking it if you go steady with me. And she said, I will. And then the next day, that was gone.
It's done. Oh, how funny. How funny. Okay, we're going to continue on. What else do you want to talk about?
All right. Here's some things I picked up just from newspapers. Between 1911 and 1917, is held with conjunction Logan County, Kentucky at Adairsville. I mentioned that before. Then in 1918, they didn't hold a fair in Robinson County. They held it in Logan County. In 1919, it was called the Agricultural and Livestock Fair of Robinson County. They didn't have a fair of association there. 1922, they had 5 different communities in Robinson County participating in the fair, along with the Boys and Girls 4-H Club.
These allergies are kicking us. Between Bill and I, we're both just and a wheezing. It's just getting us.
That's pollen and stuff.
Yeah, it's getting us. It's
and
getting us.
1924, the state gave $350 to Robinson County, and Robinson County gave $500 for the support of the fair, and the Kiwanis Club took the responsibility of sponsoring the event. The Kiwanis Club just got formed right before them. 1925, Joseph Burns, who's famous, Joe Burns down in
right.
Adams.
Joe Burns.
He was a Democratic congressman from Adams. and later as Speaker of the House, he came to the fair, and people, all around him.
That was a big deal.
And there was 6,000 people who came to the fair in that year, 1925, and they used the Tennessee-Kentucky warehouse owned by Robert Glover. I don't know where that was. Somebody knows about tobacco warehouses would know. I could look it up, I guess. And in 28, a guy running for president had a booth. His name was Al Smith. He had a booth at the fair. And also that year was the first time they sold stock in the Fair Association. And it cost 50 cents to be a member of the Fair Association or have stock in it. 1934, the Fox Hunters Association, that was big back then, fox hunting, met at the old McMurray loose floor, and the fair was held there on South Main Street. That loose floor was also called Moore, Casey, and Bernard loose floor. Mm-hmm. Then, as I said, 1934, they had a horse show at Shell Park. That was on north of town. When you go up there and it splits off the Barren Plains to the left and goes right to Adairsville, it was right in that triangle there. It was called Shell Park. Now, a funny thing, I've noticed that around that time, I got a picture of my grandfather with a horse he really loved. Didn't have a car, but this was early 1900s. And back then, people who were very wealthy had cars. Everybody had horses.
Right.
But now, everyone has cars, but only wealthy have horses.
Isn't that funny how it flips? Isn't that hysterical?
Funny the way things change around,
Yeah, for sure.
And, of course, all the cowboys had horses.
That's funny. That's funny.
Then in 1928, Al Smith, who was running for president, had a booth. So there's two people. It was
very political. I mean, well, and it still is. If there's any, when I was running for Congress, you had to go to all these county fairs. You got to be there. So there's always been a political element.
Doc Kumar, really good at that. Yeah. The first fair board was in 1938. And to be a member, as I said, you had to pay 50 cents. 50 cents is a lot more than it is now. Well, John Dunn was elected the first president of the fair board in 1939. And that's where they first moved and had a permanent location instead of the tobacco warehouses. And then they had horse shows and fairs in the Jones and Payne warehouse. So they skipped around to warehouses.
So when you said that was the first year, is that at the same established fairgrounds then?
No, not where we are now.
Okay.
That came later.
Okay.
Then in 1940, the fair was held with the first annual tobacco festival with Mr. S. Hendrickson as chairman. Now, Mr. Hendrickson, I knew. He lived about a block away from our house. He was from Germany, and his son-in-law, who married Mr. Hendrickson's daughter, he was a member of the Luftwaffe in the late 30s. And he came and moved here, and he got in the tobacco business too, because there was a lot of money in the tobacco business. But during World War II, there was a Mr. Farmer who would go in, where the old post office was, is a museum now. He would go upstairs and call Washington and report on Mr. Hendrickson and his son-in-law, because they suspicion that they might be German spies.
Right.
And the word got out that the Germans were going to come in and parachute onto their farm, which was on 431 North going toward Adairsville on the left, big white column house, which was silly, but people believed anything back then because they're afraid of what they didn't know.
Right.
But that was, I remember both of them, because Mr. Hendrickson's son-in-law had two boys, twins, and I played with them. We would call them Red and Beaver. Back then in the movies, there was a movie about Red and Beaver. They were Indian boys, and we pretend we were Red and Beaver. But anyway, that's why I remember that so much.
That's Kathy Sneed is saying that in the 60s, you would get free tickets to go to the fair, and then you'd get out of school early to go to the fair parade.
I remember that. Yeah. Fair parade was a big deal. Big deal.
Yeah, that's
and there was the first fairest of the fair was Nell McDougal. She was a fair queen, and I think I seem like I remember finding a picture of her in one of the old papers, but I've got it.
I don't remember you showing that to us. I kind of think I remember seeing you bring that in one time.
Robinson County Fair is ranked as number 2 in value of agricultural products in the state in 1940. So it was really still a big deal county back in 1940, even not only in the late 1800s and early 1900s, but Robinson County has been big. You know, now I drive around out through Adams. I go get go through Barren Plains to get some barbecue and stuff down there, and I see all this land that's being taken up with houses. I hate to see that because I love looking at the land, and you know, it's just so pretty with crops and things going on. But anyway, it was called the capital of the Black Patch District. Robinson County was back in 1940, and then the activities started coming with parades, baby shows, motorcades of celebrities. I remember John R. Long running for a senator, I think, and I was in a car, just a kid, 12, 13 years old, I think, riding in the parade, you know, with them. They had fiddlers contest, which you still see that down in some of the counties down in Middle Tennessee. Let's see, you have cowboy entertainment. They had, you know, cowboys with guns, and that was, you know, wasn't real, but they put on a little show. Horse shows, floats, trapeze acts, square dancing, beauty pageants, and they had a coronation ball at Harrison Jones Loose Floor. Now I know where that was, but and 1948, the fair was held at the new fairgrounds on 41. That was
okay.
Now I have a home movie of the beauty queens riding on the back of cars coming into the fairs on a dirt road because Memorial Boulevard hadn't been built then. This was the early 50s.
So you said what year was it that they moved to the fairgrounds?
1948.
48. Okay. Okay.
In 1958, the American Legion bought Memorial Field from the Fair Association because they had all that area where that filling station is now, and they had all of that, and it got sold off, you know, to what they just needed. So they had booths, you know. In this movie, I thought, well, I can remember somebody, and I don't recognize anybody in the movie.
In the little movie video.
Yeah, I have a home. I'll put it on Facebook. Because I think it's really neat. It was taken by Mr. S.E. Myers, Stell Myers. He owned Western Auto, and that's where I got the movie from, his son. And I asked him if I could show it, and he said, sure. So I put it on Facebook one time a couple of years ago, I think, but I'll do it again.
That's cool. That's really cool. Let me pause and gather your thoughts real quick. I don't have another ad to do, but I do have a couple of things we need to mention for Lee Marie. Stephen has a group class that's starting today, 8:30 to 9, that she wanted to be sure and put out there. It's about flexibility, strength and balance, and breathing, and you can learn to increase your oxygen intake, strength, your fat-burning agility, and improve your overall health, energy, and sleep. Stephen Astaire is teaching this, got decades of training in body efficiency. Bring a workout mat. It's a $15 class. And then tonight, the Tennessee Firearms Association is meeting. Robeson County Chamber, they're going to have their potluck. They're still at the Well in the Square inside Crossroads Bookstore. Potluck's going to start at 6. The program will be at 6:35. Special guest speaker is State Trooper Andrew Coppinger. I'm sure the pronunciation on the name, but Coppinger, I think, of the Tennessee Highway Patrol. He is part of the Capital Protection Unit and Explosives Detection Canine Handler. The potluck theme for tonight, anything goes. Free admission, everybody is welcome. But again, they're still at the Well in the Square, which is down right there beside Crossroads Christian. And they normally meet at the Legion building up in Greenbrier, but they've been doing some renovation at the American Legion building. So that's why they're still at Crossroads Christian. So that's tonight for the Tennessee Firearms Association. And then, of course, you can join Steve for his class today at 8:30. And back to you, Bill. I'm not going to interrupt you again. What else do we want to talk about? You want to keep talking fair, or do we want to talk a little
firearms thing, if you want to come, anybody can come, but bring something to eat. Like I go get cornbread at Baldwin's and bring it. But you need to be there a little before 6 because everything starts at 6:30 and everybody's through eating. So, get there early, 5:45, something like that. And I go.
It's a great group.
It is.
Group.
It is.
You'll enjoy it.
And there's a lot of politicians there right now.
Oh yes, because we've got a special election coming up on October 7th. And that's going to be the primary, and then the general is going to be on December 2nd. And that's 2 holidays that the kids are going to be getting from school because we can't have the schools open when they're polling. And so those are 2 dates off that are not on the school calendar. So just to kind of throw that out there, October 7th and December 2nd are days off that we normally would not have. So just mention that while we're thinking about it. And that means our talent show is 2 weeks from today that we're doing. It got moved up because of the special election. So we're hustling, trying to get our talent show together at Greenbrier, but it's going to happen. Anyway.
Robertson County has always, since the 1800s, middle 1800s, known as, agricultural farming, cattle, and produce. And that's what the fair was functioning around. Was cattle, produce, farming equipment, how to make clothes, how to live in the country. And it's still that way. You still have prizes. I remember one time they had a parade uptown. I got to look that up and see what date that was, but they had this pet parade. And this is early 1900s. There's a lawyer here in town that had this Gene Beck's grandfather actually, and he rode a white horse and he led the parade, and everybody had a pet, and they'd have dogs and cats and gerbils and whatever, but one of them had a snake on a leash, another one had a rat on a leash. They had everything you can imagine, and they had a judge of the best.
On a leash.
I think somebody won that had a donkey or something like that.
Funny.
But Springfield's always. I like new ideas, and they've always been that way, done things new. But, the fair's been where it's at since 1958 at, their location, so it's never changed. That was, 58 was the year after Memorial Boulevard was made.
Okay.
So, 57 is when it was made. And funny thing about that, when Memorial Boulevard was built, is made out of this new type of concrete that they were really going on about, and it had a little hump in the middle of the road that had rivets in it, I guess, little things. So if your car hit that, it would rumble. You weren't supposed to be there.
Kind of thing.
And they had a beauty contest at the fair, and Dr. Elder's daughter won. And during that time, they put a time capsule in Memorial Boulevard down in front of the old armory. And they dug a hole, put the time capsule in. I've got a picture of the mayor and a couple of girls standing there. It was fairest of the fair and whatever. And they said it was supposed to have been open 50 years later. Well, it's been over 50 years. It's still there. And the only reason I know approximately where it is because I have a picture, and it's got the old fairground building in the back, or the old armory, building in the back. So somewhere between that filling station and the old armory is where it's at. But what they did, that when I mentioned they built it out of this new type of concrete, they thought it was great. The first rain that came, it became glass. It was so slick, slick as glass. And I remember seeing a car going up Memorial underneath the railroad track trestle, and it stopped and sliding back. So immediately it had to come in and put asphalt on it because of that concrete didn't work well. So when they did that, they covered all that, the little humped up things with little lines in it. They covered it up, so they don't know where that capsule is. And I remember Howard Bradley, I wrote an article about it in the paper several years ago, and Howard Bradley called me and said, "Are we supposed to open that thing?" I said, "Well, that's up to somebody else to decide, but it's there."
It's probably under the highway then.
It's in the middle of the highway.
Oh my goodness!
So not likely somebody's going to go dig it up.
They've got these like thermal imaging things now, or they've got these. They've got a way. They do this in archaeology where they come in and they can look
They do.
underground.
Yeah.
And so there's a way to do
Probably,
it.
yeah.
You know, to see where it would be.
At least we know
but-
approximately where it's at.
Yeah.
But you'd have to go through asphalt. It's been on there probably 2 or 3 times, and the concrete, you got to go down pretty far to even get to the ground
Yeah.
part.
Would it be worth it? Probably not.
It would be to me. I would love it.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see,
yeah.
but you think about the things they put in there. I've never been around any of these. You know, we buried time capsules. I think we did something back in in the 1976 at the the bicentennial and all of that kind of thing. And I think there were some things, but there was supposed to be 100 years.
Years ago, they did it more. There was one on the west side of the courthouse, I remember.
Yeah.
I think they took it up, and there was one at the old gymnasium of Springfield High School, the old gym before the one now.
Mm-hmm.
There was one right around the corner. They buried right around that at one time.
Right.
There's probably more, but
I'm sure. It's we're almost out of time, Bill.
I'm sorry.
No, I just looked at the clock and I thought, and I really, before we go, I want you to mention something about this theater. You said it's selling.
Okay, Capitol Theater.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about that,
Okay.
because in these last couple of minutes, because I'm curious about it, because I didn't know it was going up for auction.
Capitol Theater, when they stopped, they had it remodeled in about 2015, and then I think it stopped doing anything a couple of years later. And
COVID kind of shut everything down.
So a man had bought it out of Nashville, bought it, and I think he had ideas of what they could do with it, and it didn't pan out. So it's been sitting there. That theater cost $80,000 when they built it in the early 1900s, and they were, I've got a whole story, and it will be in the paper about theaters and week after next. And they're going to have that. They're going to auction that theater off. Bluegrass Realty or whatever it is the name. And so the newspaper called me and asked me if I'd write an article on it, which I did. It's coming out then. But $80,000 is like over $1 million today when they did it. And the theater was very interesting. They had upstairs, and they had 2 entrances, one on the right for African Americans, and they go upstairs in the balcony, and the whites were not allowed to go in the balcony, just blacks. And I thought, I want to be in the balcony. I like balcony. I wanted to be up there, but no, they wouldn't let me go up there. So anyway, they had 2 entrances. There was a doorway on the right. In fact, I guess it's still there. I don't know. Maybe they blocked it up. And then right next to the left side of the doorway was a ticket window.
Right.
And it was very nice on the inside, decorated and all that. And I have some pictures of Gene Autry came and, sort of promoted it, and other movie stars. I've got pictures of him with Berlin Kleinert and some other people, the manager, A.L. Hancock, promoting different things. And they would travel around, these actors and actresses would travel around the counties doing that. But anyway, that's another story.
It's going to be, and we're out of time. It's 8 o'clock, and we've got to go. I could sit here and talk to you for a while now. We could have talked a whole lot more about that theater. I didn't realize all that. I didn't know they had that.
We had many other theaters before that. Princess was one with the talkie movies, but they had several non-talkie theaters all around town.
Really?
Yeah. And I've got information on all that.
That's fascinating. We'll have to talk more about that next month, maybe.
That's fine.
But by then we'll have a new buyer on that, and we'll see if they're going to do something with it.
Yeah.
I hope they do. I hope they do something creative with that
Well, it used to be a
space.
livery stable there, and man built a block building there for a livery stable.
Okay.
And then they came in and spent $80,000, and that was the same time as late 30s when the talkies first started coming into Springfield. And the first movie was about cowboys.
So the movies that had sound. Is that what you're
Yeah,
talking
movies had
about?
sound. Before that, it was non-talkie movies.
Yeah.
And the sound
I've just
started.
never heard it called talkie.
Well, I don't know how to.
Because, they say silent picture era.
Silent picture and then talkies.
And then talkies. I never heard them called
Well, that's
talkies.
something I said. No, I don't
Well,
know.
but I mean, that's interesting. And the difference, the different way people express it, that's interesting. That's interesting. Bill Jones, guys, always fun and interesting to talk to about history. On the second Monday of the month, we visit with him. And then, I call him randomly from time to time and get him in here when our guests don't show up.
Yeah.
But try not to do that at the last minute, but it happens a lot.
happens.
He's always, yes, he does. And he's always so gracious to join us. And thank you guys for joining us this morning. I do want to remind you again, TFA today, tonight, go at the there at Crossroads Christian and by the well in the square and get there early, like Bill said, and bring something to eat.
If you can't bring anything to eat, still come.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're not going to be thrown out.
And you'll enjoy your time
More
there.
food than you can eat, let me tell
Enjoy
you.
Stephen from 8:30 to Dave for his first class there at the well in the square on flexibility and fitness and all the things. So tomorrow, we will hear from Dr. Danny Weeks, our director of schools. They have a school board meeting tonight, y'all. Did you know that? Well, that's what's going to happen tonight, and we'll hear from him tomorrow. Thank you for joining us. This is 1100 WSGI. God bless. Have a fabulous day.
I hear people all around me talking about their new religions that are giving them the freedom to be how they want to be. I keep reading in my Bible about the teachings of false prophets and learning more and more how we're deceived by what